What is the way to transcend the indulgences of samsara and nirvana? Turning one's back on self-centered thoughts and arousing the Bodhi mind, the altruistic wish for awakening. Okay, so what is the way to transcend the indulgences of samsara and nirvana? Turning one's back on self-centered thoughts and arousing the Bodhi mind, the altruistic wish for full awakening. Okay, so you might wonder, why do we talk about transcending nirvana? Isn't that one of our goals? And why does it say the indulgences of samsara and nirvana? How are you being indulgent in nirvana if that's one of the goals of the path? Okay, so here nirvana is referring to the personal peace, the personal state of liberation of an arhat. Okay, so somebody who's followed the path, who's eliminated all the afflictive obscurations, has attained arhatship. Yeah, but that person is free from samsara, which is wonderful. I mean, it's an incredible achievement. But that person still has the cognitive obscurations. So the cognitive obscurations limit the mind from perceiving all phenomena. And so not being omniscient, that person can't be of the greatest benefit to all other living beings. And one of the reasons that they haven't eliminated the cognitive obscurations is because of the very subtle self-centered thought. Okay, so there's two kinds of self-centered thought. There's the very gross one that we're really involved in. I want this, give me that, get this away from me, how come you do this? Okay, that's the gross one. But then there's a subtle one that you can still have even after you've overcome the gross one, which is a subtle preference for one's own, or a subtle partiality, we can say, for one's own state of peaceful nirvana. And so that partiality of treasuring one's own nirvana more than the liberation of other living beings limits one's own mind from attaining full Buddhahood and eliminating the cognitive obscurations, which it's necessary to abandon in order to attain full awakening. Okay, so we often, another way of talking about two extremes, okay, there's many sets of two extremes, don't get confused. So here, there's the extreme of samsara and the extreme of nirvana. So the extreme of samsara, we're living in the middle of that. So, where you have the self-grasping ignorance and the very gross self-centered thought, and our minds all the time are just about my happiness now. So having overcome that by eliminating the afflictive obscurations, one attains nirvana. But if one attains nirvana without having generated the bodhicitta, then it's one's own personal peace, and one still has the cognitive obscurations. So that's said to be the other extreme, because one still hasn't arrived at full awakening, the state of benefit where one can be of the greatest benefit to all beings. Okay, so those are two extremes, and they're indulgent in the sense that both of them are, the star of the show is me, yeah, or the preference is me, the one who's the chief one is me. Okay, so we have to overcome that emphasis, that unhealthy emphasis on the self, yeah, so that we can generate the equal-hearted and impartial love and compassion for all beings, and then generate the bodhicitta, which will lead us to really deepen the wisdom realizing emptiness and use it to eliminate even the cognitive obscurations so that we attain full awakening. Okay, is that clear on these kind of two? So sometimes we talk about three vehicles being the hearer vehicle, solitary realizer vehicle, and then the bodhisattva vehicle. So the hearer and solitary realizer vehicle are those people who strive to attain an arhat's liberation. Yeah. And then the bodhisattva's vehicle, when you follow that, leads you to Buddhahood. In the Pali tradition, most of the people wouldn't study so much about bodhicitta. They would maybe study the paramis, the perfections, okay, and learn those because those are ways of accumulating a lot of merit. But only a few people would study the bodhisattva tradition within the Pali, the bodhisattva teachings within the Pali tradition. Okay? Yeah, because there is a bodhisattva vehicle set out there. It isn't as well explained and extensively explained as it is in the Mahayana teachings or in the Sanskrit tradition, but it's still there. Okay? But what you have nowadays, that's really interesting, is you have some people who are Theravada practitioners who will attend, like His Holiness Dalai Lama's teachings, and even take the bodhisattva vows. So, yeah. In the West, you have a lot of people really going beyond their own tradition and learning more about other traditions. Yeah, once you become an arhat, you can then generate bodhicitta and attain Buddhahood, but that's the long way to get to Buddhahood. Because if you do it that way, then you go through the five hero vehicle paths and attain, the arhatship. And then when you generate bodhicitta, then you remain like in your blissful samadhi on emptiness for a long time until the Buddha wakes you up. And then you have to go back to the first of the bodhisattva paths, the path of accumulation, because even though you have the realization of emptiness, you don't have all the merit that the bodhisattvas have. So you have to start on the first bodhisattva path in order to accumulate the merit that helps you to go from one path to the next. Yeah. Even though you've already realized emptiness, which the new bodhisattvas who haven't become arhats, they don't have the direct realization of emptiness until the third path. Okay. Well, it's quicker to enter the bodhisattva vehicle directly without first entering the hearer's vehicle, completing it, and then going back to the beginning of the bodhisattva vehicle. It's easier just to generate bodhicitta from the get-go and do that. Okay? It's kind of like a very bad example, but some kind of example, is when you transfer colleges. You always lose credit, and you have to go back some. Yeah. So I told you it's a bad example, but it's the idea. If you directly go into the college you want to graduate from, it's easier and quicker than if you go to one college and then you have to transfer and you've missed some classes and you have to do some things over and so on. Okay? Well, I know actually some people in the Pali tradition, have loving kindness and compassion, 101, 102, 103. Yeah, but they don't have the bodhicitta. Yeah. So they're different. But another point here is that having said that, it's very important to respect arhats because they have a very high realization, much higher than us, who are just kind of fumbling around trying to be bodhisattvas, trying to generate our artificial bodhicitta. So they are already liberated from samsara. So, definitely worthy of respect. Yeah. But we don't follow everything they're practicing because while we dwell on renunciation of samsara, we expand that renunciation to be for all living beings, to renounce the misery of all living beings.